Damien English, 10 minutes.
Again, I want to welcome the opportunity to have a discussion on this as well, instead of where the government stands on this bill. I know we've had a few similar discussions over the last year and a half, 2 years already on the same topic about the right to a house, a right to a home, and other conversations as well. And I'm conscious that this is in the build-up to the protests that have been organised for Saturday as well. And again, I would say that we listen to a lot of these speeches here night after night, and I'm sorry I missed some of the earlier ones, which I've no doubt set out a lot of solutions as well. But the speeches I've heard, again, didn't give me any greater solutions to how to deliver houses, how to go site by site and put houses on them. So I repeatedly say, yes, we can make all these changes if you want here, but that doesn't necessarily give you the houses. And this constant mantra to say that there's no social housing build programme is dishonest, and it's not true, and it is wrong to keep saying it. And you're dishonest with people. I have no problem with you saying it's not enough, or you want more, or you do more, and good luck to you, and show us how you do it site by site. But it is wrong and dishonest to keep saying there's no social housing build programme, because it's not factually true. And to lead people out here on a protest on Saturday with the impression that there's no social housing building programme is wrong. And I looked through and I analysed the demands of the protests, and there are many. But one of them is that the government start a social housing building programme. We started it over 3 years ago. Yes, it is true, Deputy Connolly, you are right to say it was stopped in the past and governments right in the market. Absolutely. But it's not right to say it hasn't restarted. And I have no problem with people wanting different things and more and extra, but please stop peddling this lie that there's no social housing building programme, because it doesn't make sense. A budget was passed here only a couple of months ago allocating 2.4 billion to build houses, to fund the social housing build programme. I know you don't like it all, that's fair enough. But please be some honesty in the debate, because there's no point having this constant discussion based on false premises that there's no social housing build programme. Just put that out there, because I think it's ridiculous that you keep coming in saying the same thing, debate after debate, that isn't true. And today, anyone that wants to come with me today or tomorrow, I'll bring you to 294 sites that we are building houses, where there are, as of today, 5,000 social houses under construction that are happening, they're real, they're there. So please stop. So please now stop saying they're not happening. And I have no problem with you saying you want more. No problem with that. That's honest. That's fair. It's dishonest to say there's none. Again, Cathaoirleach Kilcorla stated earlier, while we are opposing this bill, we recognise that the matter of potential inclusion of such right to housing needs further consideration, and we support doing so by way of consideration by an Oireachtas committee, which will consider all of the economic, social and cultural rights referred to in the 8th report of the Convention on the Constitution. While there is no constitutional right to housing, it is important to note that there are existing specific substantive and procedural statutory rights in relation to social housing assistance arising from legislation that has passed through this House. These include the right to apply for social housing assistance and the right to be assessed for social housing assistance once you have applied. The right to obtain housing assistance payment once eligible for income grounds, subject to some restrictions or suitability of documentation, or otherwise be placed on a waiting list for social housing. The right not to be discriminated against on the basis of gender, marital status, family status, sexual orientation, religion, age, disability, race, or membership of the traveller community. The right to purchase the local authority house, subject to certain conditions. The duty of the local authority to make an assessment of housing need, to make an allocation scheme and operate according to it, and to have regard to the needs which the scheme is supposed to meet. Rights in relation to the procedure for tenancy, warning and eviction. The Housing Act 1988 places particular responsibility on local authorities to provide for the accommodation needs of people who are homeless. There are also many legislative protections in place in relation to private housing and rented accommodation, including protections for the family home, again which is very often dishonestly discussed in this House, the right to a 4-year tenancy or a 6-year tenancy for those tenancies commencing after the 26th of December 2016, with limited grounds for termination in private rented accommodation if a tenant has been in occupation for 6 months continuously and no notice to quit has been served. The right to guaranteed notice periods that must be given to tenants on the termination of tenancy, reflective of the length of time spent in the tenancy. The right to a rent that is no greater than current market rent for tenancies in the rent pressure zone. The right to a rent increase that is no greater than 4% annually for 3 years. And we all agree rents are too high. No one's disputing that. We accept that. We disagree how we're going to address that, because you don't believe it supplies any reference on that, but actually does. Because if you drive an hour from this place, 4 years ago, you could rent a house for half the price. So supply is relevant. And this warped view that supply is not relevant is wrong. Of course supply is relevant. If you've got empty spare houses, which we had here in 2011, we had 3,000 ghost estates and we had thousands of empty houses, rent was much cheaper because there was available stock. Roll on 10 years later, a number of years later, when there was no building for 7 or 8 years, of course we're going to have higher rents. Of course we're going to have an issue because of the supply of housing. So they are linked. They're not the sole reason, but they are linked. And don't keep telling me they're not linked, because again, that's eluding yourself as well. The right to a tenant that is no greater than current market rent for tenancies in a rent pressure zone, I went through that already. The right to refer a landlord and tenant dispute or resolution to the Private Residential Tenancies Board. The Residential Tenancies Amendment No. 2 Bill 2018 was passed here last week and is before the channel here this evening as well. The main provisions in that bill relate to the making, again, the new standing provisions to try and help tenants as well, make it a criminal offence for landlords to implement rent increases that contravene the law. Providing powers to the RTB to investigate and administratively sanction landlords who engage in improper conduct. Allowing the RTB to instigate an investigation without the need for complaint, requiring the annual registration of tenancies with the RTB. The designation of existing RPZs will be extended to the end of 2021. The exemptions from the 4% per annum rent increase restriction to RPZs have been revised so as to apply only to the first rent setting rather than to every rent setting during the period of the RPZ designation in respect of a new rental property, including a property that had not been rented in the 2-year previously prior to the commencement of a particular tenancy. Also, a definition is proposed to illustrate the type of works that qualify for the exemption from the rent increase restriction in respect of a substantial change in the nature of the rental property. Because again, we've all heard the different evidence around that as well, so we're trying to deal with that too. Revisions are also proposed in respect of the average rent qualifying criteria for the RPZ designation. Outside of the RPZs, the requirement for biannual rent review cycles rather than annual will continue to the end of 2021. The new RTB sanctioning regime will apply to improper conduct by a landlord who contravenes the tenancy termination provisions. Landlords will be required to copy a tenancy termination notice to the RTB. Where a landlord terminates tenancy because he or she intends to sell the property, he or she must enter into a contract for a sale within 9 months of the termination date, or else offer to relet to a former tenant who provides their contact details. And again, there's more changes in that legislation, which most people that have took time in that debate would know about as well. Again, these key reforms and the reforms are designed to enhance and enforcement powers for the RTB, provide greater security of tenure for tenants and greater rights, and further underpin the operation of the rent pressure zone arrangements, along with some further targeted priority measures. In relation to the Sinn Féin bill, it is also important to note that, as we stated earlier, that the general concept of potential inclusion of right to housing in the Constitution is not a tenet to be posed here tonight. And again, I said before, I don't have an issue with it, but there's a process to go through to get there. But rather, any such step should be taken with the appropriate level of scrutiny and with due regard to the complexities that arise in proposing such an amendment to the Constitution. And there's members here that sit in that committee, and this has been referred to committee before, so maybe members that are on that might want to try to put a work on the agenda there to bring that forward for discussion as well. In the case of this bill, it is not immediately clear what the effect of the proposed amendment would be. Given the potential for unintended consequential policy, legal and financial effects and the complexity of the issues raised by the 8th Convention report, it is appropriate that the Government should oppose this bill and instead follow the process already agreed, which is the referral to the committee, and I hope that it would go through that journey as well. Further, on a practical level, as I started earlier on, it is unclear what tangible effect the proposed constitutional amendment would have in terms of solving our current housing problems. I'm not convinced, guys, what extra house is going to give us. And I've asked this question many times, and no one can show me where it will help us deliver more houses, because I can't see it. And Owen Murphy said the same as well. So it's not that, again, this debate can continue on, but it doesn't help us or hinder us in any way with what we're trying to do, which is to rebuild the social housing stock as well. And again, because I'm only going to run out of time, when I say there's a social housing stock programme, social housing bill programme started, it is started. And there's money ring-fenced for the next 10 years on the Project 2040 to deliver that. And I have to say again, and I repeat it, no one's challenged me on this, the ambition we have in that is to deliver 12,000 social houses a year, every year, out to the lifetime of that, which is up to 2028. I've read most of your policies, guys, and I've seen nobody committing to that level of social housing every year, year on year. No, I have not seen it. I have read your with respect, and I'm not interrupting anybody, with respect, your own housing policy that you launched at the Sinn Féin budget 2018 talked about 100,000 houses. Not any more than that. If you add up what we're doing with our plans, we're way beyond that. It is actually factually true. It's written in your own document. And maybe you might read it as well. No doubt you might change it as you go along. But in your budget last year, when we were debating budgets here, our commitment, our ambition for social housing is higher than your own. So I really think, guys, if you want to have protests and you want to do all that, that's fine, do all that. But look at your own plans and come in here and spell out, site by site, where you will deliver social housing as well. This year, we will deliver 10,000 social houses. They're not all the way you like them. I accept that. We have different ways of delivering housing. 6,400 will be direct and new build. Combination of social housing directly built by the local authorities, approved housing bodies and Part 5. Yes, there's some houses leased. I know you have a problem with that. Fair enough. We don't, and we've got a couple of thousand lease houses in that as well. We'll also acquire houses as well, and in total there'll be 10,000 new social houses this year, and we'll build that every other year. And with respect to you all, nobody has shown me a plan of delivery that shows that you can deliver any more houses than that in social houses as well. Final point I would say. I'll make one final point, sorry.
Well,
everybody keeps saying HAP is wrong and HAP is not good and so on. Well, at this moment in time, there's about 45,000 families in a HAP situation. Naturally, we would all prefer if they were permanent social housing stock and they were there forever. And that's what the aim is long term. But as of tonight, if you didn't have the HAP scheme, you'd have 45,000 families wouldn't have a house. And again, none of you give the answer to that question. But that is the reality of it. And for most of those people, they're quite happy in that house. Yes, some doesn't work out very well, but they're well beyond the majority are very happy with their HAP house because it's a family home.
10 minutes.